Standing in the courthouse hallway at 8:47 a.m., I watched my parents exchange confident smiles with Judge Harold Brennan. I felt nothing, no anger, no sense of betrayal, only the cold certainty that comes from having irrefutable evidence and the federal government firmly on your side. My father glanced at his Rolex, a gift from the judge, as I would later discover, and gently patted my mother's hand. "This will be over by lunch," he said. "Then we can finally move forward without her interference." They were suing me for $8.4 million, money they claimed I had stolen from the family business. In reality, it was mine, legally owned, meticulously documented, and completely legitimate. But they had Judge Brennan, and they believed that was enough. They were wrong. I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, in a family that valued exactly two things: money and the appearance of respectability. My father, Richard Caldwell, had built Caldwell Financial Services from a small investment firm into a mid-sized wealth management company worth roughly $340 million. My mother, Patricia, managed the social connections that brought in high-net-worth clients. As their only child, they made their expectations clear from the time I was 12, join the family business, marry well, produce heirs, and never question their authority. I had different plans. At 18, I went to MIT to study computer science. My father was furious. "We don't need a programmer," he said. "We need a finance professional." "Then hire one," I replied. At MIT, I thrived. By my junior year, I had developed a proprietary algorithm for analyzing market trends that caught the attention of several tech companies. By senior year, I had incorporated my own company, Sentinel Analytics, and licensed the algorithm to 3 major financial firms. I graduated at 22 with a company valued at $12 million. My parents' reaction wasn't pride, it was anger. "You used family connections," my father accused at my graduation dinner. "Our clients, our reputation." "I used my own work," I corrected him. "None of your clients are involved. It's a completely different market." My mother's lips tightened. "You're embarrassing us," she said. "Running around playing entrepreneur when you should be learning the real business." The real business was Caldwell Financial Services. I had seen their books during college breaks, when my father insisted I learn the family trade. What I saw disturbed me: aggressive fee structures that bordered on predatory, clients pushed toward high-commission products regardless of suitability, and accounting practices that hovered in the gray space between legal and fraudulent. I wanted nothing to do with it. Over the next 6 years, I built Sentinel Analytics into a $180 million company. I hired brilliant people, secured contracts with Fortune 500 firms, and earned a reputation for ethical business practices and innovative solutions, the exact opposite of everything my parents believed truly mattered. I was featured on Forbes 30 Under 30, invited to speak at major tech conferences, and offered board positions at companies I genuinely admired. My parents attended exactly none of these events. Instead, they spent their time telling friends at the country club that I was going through a phase and would eventually come back to the real family business. Then my grandfather died, and with him, the truth finally surfaced. Grandpa Thomas was my father's father, a quiet man who had founded Caldwell Financial Services in 1974 with nothing but intelligence and integrity. Over the years, I had watched my father slowly transform Grandpa's honest firm into something else entirely. Grandpa saw it too. In the final year of his life, he quietly established a trust worth $1.15 million, held separately from the business and designated to be transferred to me upon his death. He didn't tell my parents. He told me during one of my weekly visits to his care facility. "Your father changed the business," Grandpa said, his voice weak but steady. "He made it about taking, not serving. You're different, Caroline. You build things that matter. This money is yours. Use it well." He passed away 3 months later. The trust documents had been meticulously prepared by his personal attorney, not the family's usual legal team. My name was on everything. I had full control. No contingencies, no loopholes. When the will was read, my father's face turned purple. "This is a mistake," he snapped. "That money belongs to the business. It belongs to the family. The estate attorney calmly shook his head. The trust is explicit and legally sound. Ms. Caroline Caldwell is the sole beneficiary. I took the money and reinvested it into expanding Sentinel Analytics. We opened a San Francisco office, hired 30 new employees, and secured a government contract worth $53 million over 3 years. After that, my parents stopped speaking to me entirely. 2 full years of silence. Then came the lawsuit. It arrived via courier on a Tuesday morning. My parents were suing me for $8.4 million, accusing me of misappropriating funds from Caldwell Financial Services during my college years. They claimed I had used proprietary family business information to build Sentinel Analytics, stolen client lists and trade secrets, and damaged Caldwell Financial's reputation through reckless business practices. Every allegation was false, demonstrably, provably false. But the facts were never the point. The point was the judge, the Honorable Harold Brennan of the Connecticut Superior Court. My father's golf partner of 15 years. I hired Catherine Vance, one of New York's top litigation attorneys. When I showed her the case assignment, she frowned. Judge Brennan is hearing this, she said. You know him. I know his reputation, Catherine said. He's been investigated twice for ethical violations. Nothing ever stuck. Then she looked at me more carefully. Your father and Judge Brennan are close. Very close. Same country club, golf outings, charity boards. Her expression hardened. That means we need to be extremely careful and extremely prepared. What I had went beyond preparation. I had suspicions, and I had the resources to pursue them. I hired a private investigation firm, not a local outfit, but a Washington, D.C., based company that specialized in financial crimes and public corruption. I gave them one simple instruction: follow the money between my parents and Judge Harold Brennan. 3 weeks later, the lead investigator, Marcus Chan, sat across from me in my office with a thick folder that would change everything. Ms. Caldwell, he said evenly, what I'm about to show you is evidence of federal crimes. Once you see this, you'll need to report it to the FBI. Are you prepared for that? Show me, I said. He opened the folder. Inside were wire transfer records, offshore account statements, property deeds, an exhaustive paper trail documenting $2.3 million in payments from my parents to Judge Harold Brennan over the past 8 years. The money had been laundered through shell companies, offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, and real estate transactions carefully structured to appear legitimate. But Marcus and his team had unraveled it all. There was a condo in Aspen purchased through a shell company owned by my father, later sold at a loss to a holding company controlled by Judge Brennan. There were consulting fees paid by Caldwell Financial to a firm that didn't exist, money that ultimately landed in the judge's offshore accounts. Yacht slip fees. Country club memberships. Wire transfers disguised as investment returns. All of it added up to $2.3 million in bribes spanning nearly a decade. How many cases? I asked quietly. Marcus flipped through several pages. We've identified at least 14 cases where Judge Brennan ruled in favor of parties connected to your father. Business disputes, contract cases, and 2 divorce proceedings where Caldwell Financial clients received unusually favorable asset divisions. This goes far beyond your lawsuit. This is systemic corruption. I called the FBI that same afternoon. Within 24 hours, I was sitting inside a federal building in New Haven, walking Special Agent Rachel Morrison through every piece of evidence. She listened closely, took detailed notes, and asked sharp, precise questions. Ms. Caldwell, she said finally, you understand that if we pursue this, your civil case against your parents becomes secondary to a federal investigation. I understand. And your parents would likely face criminal charges beyond bribery, tax evasion, wire fraud, possibly RICO charges if this connects to other activity. They made their choices, I said. I'm just providing the evidence. Agent Morrison studied me for a moment. Most people would want revenge, she said. You seem calm. I'm not doing this for revenge, I replied. I'm doing this because it's right, I said. Judge Brennan has been corrupting the judicial system for years. My parents enabled it. That has to stop. All right, Agent Morrison replied. Hey Race, what happens next? The FBI moved quickly, but quietly. They opened a full investigation into Judge Brennan and my parents, using my evidence as the foundation. They traced every transaction, interviewed witnesses, and built a case that went far beyond anything Marcus had uncovered. Meanwhile, my parents' lawsuit moved forward. I filed formal responses denying every allegation, submitted documentation disproving each claim, and prepared for trial. Catherine warned me repeatedly. He's going to rule against you on everything, she said. Every motion, every objection, every procedural issue. He's already compromised. I know. Then why are we even bothering with a defense? Because when the FBI moves, I want the record to show I did everything right, I said. I want there to be no doubt that I had legitimate defenses, and that the judge ignored them. She nodded, understanding immediately. We built the most comprehensive defense possible, knowing it probably wouldn't matter in Brennan's courtroom, but would matter immensely to federal prosecutors. 2 weeks before trial, my father called. It was the first time he'd spoken to me in 2 years. Caroline, we should be discussing this through attorneys. Dad, this doesn't have to go to trial. You could settle. Return the money Grandpa gave you, plus half of what your company is worth, he said. Well, drop the lawsuit. No. Caroline, be reasonable. Judge Brennan is a fair man, and he knows the facts. You took money that belonged to the family. He's going to rule accordingly. Judge Brennan, I said carefully, is going to do whatever you paid him to do. There was silence on the line. What did you just say? My father finally asked. I said no to your settlement, I replied. See you in court, Dad. I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anticipation. The FBI's timing was perfect. They planned to move on the day of the trial. Maximum impact. Maximum evidence. They would catch both the judge and my parents in the act of corrupting the judicial process. Agent Morrison called the night before trial. We're ready. Your job is to proceed normally. Present your defense. When the moment comes, we'll handle the rest. How will I know? I asked. Trust me, she said. You'll know. Trial day arrived on Tuesday, September 23rd. I met Catherine outside the courthouse at 8:30 a.m. We passed through security and headed to the third-floor courtroom. My parents were already there, standing in the hallway with their legal team, 2 attorneys from the most expensive firm in Hartford. My father wore his power suit, navy with thin pinstripes. My mother wore pearls and a pale blue dress that radiated respectable victimhood. When they saw me, they smiled. My father stepped closer, lowering his voice so only our small group could hear. The judge already ruled in our favor, my father whispered, his eyes gleaming with certainty. Friends in high places, Caroline. You should have learned by now that connections matter more than being right. My mother smiled, that thin, satisfied smile I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. You never had a chance, sweetheart. Harold's been a family friend for 15 years. Did you really think he'd rule against us? I said nothing. I simply looked at them calmly, then walked past and into the courtroom. Catherine leaned in close and murmured, Your parents just confessed to bribery in a courthouse hallway. I know, I replied quietly. The FBI is recording everything. We took our seats at the defense table. I opened my briefcase and removed a folder, the same evidence package I had already given the FBI. Exhibit A, wire transfer records. Offshore account statements. Property deeds. Every piece of it. The bailiff called the court to order. All rise. The Superior Court of Connecticut is now in session. The Honorable Harold Brennan presiding. Judge Brennan entered in flowing black robes. He was 63, silver-haired, and carefully cultivated to look distinguished. He smiled warmly at my parents as he took the bench, never once glancing in my direction. Please be seated, he said. We're here for Caldwell versus Caldwell, case number 2024, CV 8847. The plaintiffs seek $8.4 million in damages for alleged misappropriation and theft. Are both parties ready to proceed? My parents' attorney stood. Ready, Your Honor. Catherine rose next. Ready, Your Honor. Excellent, Judge Brennan said, shuffling his papers. I've reviewed the pleadings. Before we begin testimony, I want to address several pretrial motions. For the next 20 minutes, he ruled in my parents' favor on every single one. My motion to dismiss, denied. My motion to exclude certain evidence, denied. My motion for summary judgment based on documented proof of independent earnings, denied. Catherine objected again and again. Each time, Judge Brennan overruled her with barely concealed contempt. My parents exchanged satisfied smiles. Their attorneys looked smugly confident. Then Judge Brennan said, "Well, now proceed with opening statements." Counsel for the plaintiffs. My parents' lead attorney, Donald Richardson, stood and launched into a dramatic account of betrayal, how I had stolen family secrets, exploited insider knowledge, and built my success on the foundation of their business. It was pure fiction, but he delivered it with practiced conviction. When he finished, Judge Brennan nodded approvingly. "Thank you, Mr. Richardson." Counsel for the defendant. Catherine stood. Your Honor, before we proceed with opening statements, the defense would like to submit a new exhibit for the court's consideration. Judge Brennan frowned. That is highly irregular. What exhibit? Exhibit A, Your Honor, she said evenly. Financial records directly relevant to this case. I stood and carried the folder to the bailiff. He took it and approached the bench, placing it directly in front of Judge Brennan. The judge opened the folder casually, clearly expecting routine bank statements. His expression changed instantly. The color drained from his face, and his hands began to shake. What is this? He demanded. Where did you get this? Your Honor, Catherine said clearly and steadily, those are wire transfer records documenting $2.3 million in payments from the plaintiffs, Richard and Patricia Caldwell, to offshore accounts under your control over the past 8 years. The payments were routed through shell companies and disguised as consulting fees and real estate transactions, but they are fully traceable to your personal benefit. The courtroom erupted. Gasps rippled through the gallery. My parents' faces went stark white. Richardson shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is absurd. These documents are fabricated. They are authenticated by forensic accountants and verified by federal investigators, Catherine replied calmly. Every transaction is documented, dated, and traceable. Judge Brennan stood abruptly, his face now purple with fury. This is contempt, he shouted. I'm holding you in contempt. That was when the courtroom doors opened. FBI Special Agent Rachel Morrison entered, flanked by 4 additional agents. 2 U.S. Marshals followed behind them. The room fell into stunned silence. Your Honor, Agent Morrison said, her voice carrying across the courtroom, I'm Special Agent Rachel Morrison with the FBI. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of bribery, corruption, wire fraud, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Judge Brennan grabbed the edge of the bench as if to steady himself. This is a mistake. It's not, Agent Morrison said, approaching him. We've been investigating you for 6 months. We have extensive evidence of your acceptance of bribes in exchange for favorable rulings. The material Ms. Caldwell just submitted is only a fraction of a much larger case. She then turned toward my parents. Richard and Patricia Caldwell, you are also under arrest for bribery, wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy. My father stood up suddenly. You can't do this. We haven't done anything wrong. You paid a judge $2.3 million to manipulate legal outcomes, Agent Morrison said flatly. That's federal corruption, and it's only the beginning of what we uncovered. The agents moved in. One FBI agent read Judge Brennan his Miranda rights while securing handcuffs around his wrists. The sight was surreal, a judge in full robes being arrested in his own courtroom. Two other agents approached my parents. My mother began to cry. "Caroline, please," she said, her voice breaking. "Tell them this is a misunderstanding." I looked at her calmly. "It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. You bribed a judge repeatedly, across multiple cases. You corrupted the legal system because you couldn't accept that Grandpa's money was legally mine." My father's face twisted with rage. "You did this," he snarled. "You set us up." "No, Dad," I said evenly. "You did this to yourselves. I just documented it." Agent Morrison continued, her voice steady and professional. "We've also seized records from Caldwell Financial Services. Our forensic accountants have identified extensive securities fraud, tax evasion, and potential money laundering," Agent Morrison continued. "There will be additional charges." Richardson and his co-counsel began edging toward the exit. Agent Morrison turned her gaze on them. "Gentlemen, we'll need your cooperation. You're not under arrest, but we do have questions about what you knew regarding your client's relationship with Judge Brennan." The color drained from Richardson's face. The U.S. Marshals escorted Judge Brennan out first, still wearing his robes, his hands cuffed behind his back. Then my parents were led out separately, each flanked by federal agents. My mother was sobbing uncontrollably. My father walked in rigid silence, his jaw clenched so tightly it looked painful. As they passed my table, my father stopped. The agent beside him allowed it. "You destroyed your own family," he hissed. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed yourselves. I just refuse to let you destroy me too." They were led away. The courtroom remained frozen in stunned silence. Agent Morrison approached my table. "Ms. Caldwell, we'll need you at the federal building this afternoon for additional testimony. Can you make 3 o'clock?" "Yes. Thank you for your cooperation. Your evidence was instrumental." She lowered her voice. "And for what it's worth, I'm sorry it came to this with your family." "I'm not," I said honestly. "They made their choices knowing they were wrong. They just didn't expect to get caught." After the agents left, Catherine and I sat alone in the now empty courtroom. The court reporter had fled. The bailiff stood uncertainly near the door, unsure of what to do next. Catherine finally broke the silence. "In 23 years of practicing law, I've never seen anything like that. What happens now to the case?" I asked. "The case?" She gave a short, almost hysterical laugh. "Caroline, there is no case. The judge is under arrest. The plaintiffs are under arrest. And every allegation they made was fraudulent. This will be dismissed immediately, probably by whichever judge gets assigned to clean up this disaster." "And my parents?" "Federal corruption charges carry serious prison time," she said soberly. "Your father could be looking at 10 to 15 years. Your mother too, depending on how deep her involvement goes. And the IRS will swarm Caldwell Financial Services. That business is finished." I nodded slowly. I felt no sense of victory, only a hollow kind of relief. The consequences were immediate. Within hours, the news broke. Federal judge arrested in bribery scheme led every major Connecticut outlet. My parents' booking photos appeared on the evening news. Federal agents raided Caldwell Financial Services, seizing computers and confiscating files. By the next morning, 7 clients had filed lawsuits against the firm. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 23. The SEC opened a formal investigation. The IRS froze all company accounts. The business my father had spent more than 30 years building collapsed in just 72 hours. Judge Brennan's entire record came under scrutiny. More than 200 decisions he had issued from the bench were placed under review, and any case involving parties connected to my father was flagged for re-examination. The Judicial Ethics Committee opened formal proceedings to strip Brennan of his pension and permanently disbar him from ever practicing law again. My extended family began calling one by one. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunts and uncles demanding explanations. "Did you really have to turn them in?" My Aunt Helen asked. Couldn't you have just dropped the lawsuit? They corrupted a judge, I replied. They paid bribes. They committed federal crimes. What would you have had me do? But their family. They sued me for money I legally owned and then tried to rig the case. Family doesn't protect you from the consequences of federal crimes. After that, most of them stopped calling. I didn't mind. Catherine and I later appeared before the newly assigned judge, the Honorable Maria Santos. 2 weeks after taking the case, she dismissed it with prejudice and ordered my parents to pay $340,000 in attorney's fees and court costs. Though, Judge Santos added dryly, collection may prove difficult given the defendant's current circumstances. My parents' criminal trial was scheduled for March. Their attorneys, now court-appointed, since all their assets were frozen, negotiated plea agreements. My father pleaded guilty to bribery, wire fraud, and tax evasion. He was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. My mother pleaded guilty to conspiracy and wire fraud and received a 7-year sentence. Judge Brennan chose to go to trial, convinced he could still win. He was convicted on 17 counts and sentenced to 20 years. Caldwell Financial Services was liquidated. After client restitution and legal fees, almost nothing remained. 6 months after the arrests, I sat in my office at Sentinel Analytics, now relocated to a larger space in Boston. We had just signed a major contract with a European firm, $220 million over 5 years. Our company valuation had climbed to $380 million. My phone rang. An unknown number with a Connecticut area code. Caroline, I answered. My mother's voice came through, small and broken. They're letting me make one call before I start my sentence next week. She was crying. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what we did, for suing you, for the judge, for all of it. I said nothing. Your father won't apologize, she continued. He still thinks you betrayed us. But I know. I know we were wrong. We got greedy. We got arrogant. We thought we were untouchable. You corrupted the legal system, I said quietly. You bribed a judge. You tried to steal from me through a rigged court. Those aren't small mistakes, Mom. I know, she whispered, her voice breaking. Do you think that in 7 years, when I get out, we could talk? My mother asked softly. Do you think you could ever forgive me? I looked out the window of my office at the Boston skyline and thought about everything they had done, everything they had been willing to do. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I can't. Maybe in 7 years things will be different. But, Mom, I'm not going to wait around to find out. I'm going to build my life, run my company, and be happy with or without you in it. I understand, she whispered. I hope you use the time to figure out who you want to be, I said. Because the person who paid off a judge to steal from her own daughter, that person has to change fundamentally before we can have any kind of relationship. I'll try, she said. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. A moment later, my assistant knocked on the door. Ms. Caldwell, the Forbes reporter is here for your interview. Right, I said. Send her in. The article was about ethical leadership in tech, about building a company grounded in integrity and transparency, about doing business the right way. The reporter was young and enthusiastic. She asked about my business philosophy, my approach to leadership, and my vision for Sentinel Analytics' future. Near the end, she hesitated. Your family had a financial services company, didn't they? Caldwell Financial. Yes. There was some legal trouble, she said carefully. Your parents and a judge were convicted on federal corruption and bribery charges. She paused. Did that experience shape how you run your business? I thought about watching my father's firm over the years, seeing the corner cutting, the ethical compromises, the slow slide from legitimate business into fraud. Yes, I said. It taught me that short-term gains from unethical behavior always end up costing more than they're worth. My parents gained money and favorable rulings. They lost their freedom, their business, their reputation, and their relationship with their only child. That's not a trade I'm willing to make. What would you say to them if you could? She asked. I'd say I'm sorry they made the choices they did, I replied. But I'm not sorry I reported them. Doing the right thing isn't always easy, but it's always right. The article ran 6 weeks later. It was fair, honest, and portrayed me exactly as I had worked to be, an ethical business leader who valued integrity over profit. I never visited my parents in prison. They wrote letters sometimes. My father's were angry and accusatory. My mother's were apologetic, hopeful. I read them, but I rarely replied. 7 years is a long time. Maybe when my mother gets out, we'll talk. Maybe we'll find a way forward. Maybe we won't. Either way, it'll be fine. I built something real. Something legitimate. Something that doesn't rely on corruption to succeed. I built it honestly, and no one can take it away from me. My parents believed connections mattered more than being right. They believed money could buy any outcome. They believed a bribed judge would protect them forever. They were wrong. In the end, their friends in high places couldn't save them from the consequences of their own choices. I could have, if they had been different people, if they had valued their daughter as much as they valued winning. But they didn't. So I didn't. Justice isn't always satisfying, but it's always necessary. And watching those FBI agents walk into that courtroom was both.